starting and to start finishing whatever you have picked up. And how basically this is accomplished in Kanban. Kanban suggests 5 practices for you, which starts by visualizing your flow. We already covered the various steps involved in lean practices in the slide before. So visualization is a very important component which helps you to understand your flow. Then you limit or introduce constraints where you limit the work in progress items in each of the various stages which produces value for your customers. Then you look at your flow and look at various ways where you can optimize your flow, where you can smoothen your flow. But all this to happen, you need to know what are the process policies explicit. We know that every item that getting into your software development pipeline might not be of the same type. So you need to have a very clear process policies explicitly mentioned. And finally, once you have accomplished the 4 steps, that gives you an opportunity to improve collaboratively. So this is a high-level view of the core practices in Kanban. What we will do now is we'll pick up one at a time and then try to kind of understand how you can do that in your software development. We'll start with visualizing of your workflow. So this is an example of a workflow that we use where we have items which goes to the various value stream maps, starting with the new items which is coming into the development, then it moves into an analyzed state. From there it moves to the development and then to test and finally to the done state. So when we are visualizing this workflow, one of the most critical component is the various value stream maps which is involved in creating the value. So for us the various stages are the different states which are involved in when your work items moves across the software development pipeline. So once you define your value stream maps, the second step involved is you need to have an owner for each of the work items. So you assign, there will be a name or a person associated with the work items that is there in the various different stages in your value stream. The other component, important component in the visualization of the workflow is the various different type of the work items that's going to come into your bucket. All of the work items that's going to come into your bucket might not be of equal priority. So you might be using a color coding or any other aspects to kind of differentiate the different type of the work items that's going to come into your workflow. Now how you can use the visualization? There are many ways many team does that. Some of the team uses the sticky notes and physical wall to basically represent this. There are definitely a lot of advantages associated with that. Some of the teams uses electronic tools which helps you to kind of visualize this workflow. The example that you see on your screen is from a tool. This works well for you, especially if you are working in a distributed environment where you have team members across the geographies. A visual workflow in an electronic tool might be more effective. So regardless of whatever be the tool that you use, it's important to understand what are the various value stream maps involved in creating the value for your end customers, a way to identify the owner of your work items, and way to differentiate various different type of work items that's there in your visual dashboard. So once you define your visual dashboard, the second step involves in limiting the number of work items which can be there in each state. So why is limiting the work in progress items in each state is so important? So we talked about introducing the constraints so that you will be able to understand and optimize the flow. You will be able to understand the constraints and optimize the flow. So let's take an example which is commonly referred is that of a road. In a road, the objective, you are using a road is to help you to move from a point A to point B. So if you are going from your office to your home, one of the primary value for you to reach in using a car is to reach your home in the most effective way, in the most shortest time. So the best way you can get that is if your car is the only car in the road. But you know that's not economical and you are not really getting the maximum value of the capacity that the road is providing you. So you can keep adding more cars into the road, and as you know, it usually doesn't really impact you till you reach a specific point. Maybe it might be 50% or 60%, and when the cars are basically utilizing 60% capacity of the road, you will start seeing your time which you take from reaching from point A to point B kind of start decreasing. So we see that the throughput that you are expecting to get from the system start decreasing as in your work in progress in that system keep increasing. So there is a fine balance between these two. So we need to know what is the fine balance where you will get the best throughput for the number of work in progress items which is there in that state. And let's take the, if you go back to the example of a road, and you know that when you are moving from a point A to point B, the road is not the same all the way. You have various different stages. You have roads which are like 3-laned. You have roads which are single lane. And in each of these lanes, the work in progress limit and the throughput you can get will change based on the capacity of that specific state. The same basically applies into your software development pipeline. As your work items move through the software development pipeline, at each stage you have a work in progress limit beyond which actually your ability to move a feature from the new state all the way till done state start decreasing. So when you do Kanban, one of the objectives you will be focusing on is to identify that work in progress limit, which will help you to move your feature package from the state of new to the state of done in the most effective way. So one of the starting point could be the number of people that you have in the team. So if you have like 2 people who are working on the business, working as a business analyst, maybe you might start by setting up your work in progress limit in the analyzed state as 4. You might have like 2 or 3 developers, and you might set your work in progress limit as 6. And once you start looking at the flow, try to understand where is the bottlenecks in your flow, and you will keep improving your work in progress limit so that you reach a work in progress limit for each of these different states, which give you an ideal flow from the state A to state B. Here, moving from a feature which is there in the new state all the way till the done state. So the difference with this approach, with the conventional approach, is the fact that here your focus is not on how many tickets a business analyst is basically completing in every day. Your focus is here to make sure that a feature which is getting into your backlog, which is here into the new state, moves all the way till the done state in the shortest possible time. So we basically talked about your flow being smooth and your flow being fast. So your objective is consistently to accomplish these 2 goals. So once you bring this constraint into your flow, start creating the WIP limit for each of the various stages in your flow, and you start observing your flow. The flow will start revealing the bottlenecks, which will help you to kind of identify actions to make incremental and evolutionary changes into your process. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, Kanban doesn't force you to change your process. You might be using a traditional process, or you might be using one of your homegrown process. The idea here is to basically visualize the workflow which is there already there in your system, and helps you to identify where is the bottlenecks, so that you can focus on those bottlenecks and try to eliminate those bottlenecks, so that from a customer's perspective, he or she can basically accomplish the value in the shortest period of time. So what happens when a specific stage reaches the work in progress limit? So if you look at this slide, you can see this, the phase of testing has a work in progress limit of 3. Now, as the features go through your Kanban board, once the number of features which is there in the testing phase reaches 3, the testers stop pulling any more work items from the development team. So 3 is the work in progress limit for the testing team. So testing team, on reaching that work in progress limit, stops taking any more items from the development. As a result of that, the development will soon reach their work in progress limit, and they will in turn stop pulling the items from the analyzed state. And you can very well guess if the bottleneck in the testing stage remains there for a long time, your entire development pipeline comes to a halt. So what is the advantages of that? Basically, when your entire development line basically comes to a halt, all the focuses comes to the testing and try to identify what is that stopping the testing team unable to finish a feature so that it can be pulled from the done state for the release. So all the team swarm towards the test team and try to identify the root causes of that problem and try to fix those problems so that the flow is again restored. And once the flow is restored, the features again moves into the release to the done state, and from there to the production, helping the customers to get value in the shortest period of time from the development. Now, in case if you don't build that constraint in the testing, the developers will continue building more and more features, which is basically adding no value from a customer's perspective. Customer is not really getting any value from the number of features a developer creates or developer completes. If he completes the coding of 6 features or 7 features, is not going to make an impact to the customer. For a customer, the impact is the feature that is coming into the live production system, which he can start using. So from a Kanban perspective, the focus is always to bring that value to the customers in the shortest period of time. And for accomplishing this, Kanban consistently try to focus on the lead time, and one of the metrics which we focus on in Kanban is the lead time. So this is the time it takes for a feature to get into the system and finally get out to the customer's hand. The more the lead time, the more you have the opportunity to optimize your flow. So let me try to kind of summarize what we discussed so far. So regardless of whatever be the process that you are following, you can basically apply the framework of Kanban on top of it by identifying the various steps that you are following in your process, and then try to define the flow. And once you define the flow, you will try to introduce constraints into the various stages in your flow based on your understanding, so that you will understand and will be able to uncover the bottlenecks in your flow. As you remove the bottlenecks, as you increase your understanding about the system, you will keep changing your work in progress limit so that you can at one point of time accomplish a flow which is smooth and which is fast also. At the end of the day, the focus of the flow is to help the customers to get the value in the shortest effective time. So you know now how the work items flow through a Kanban board, but we know that all the work items are of not the same type. You will have different type of work items, and the expectations and the standards for each of these work items will be different. So you need to basically define the classes of service based on what impact that brings into the business. David, in his books, basically recommend you to start with 4 different type of service levels, but you need not be constrained by these 4 service levels. You can basically bring your own. So one of the service levels that David discusses in his book is the expedite service level, which is more like a production critical issues. You are working on an some of the features, a production issue comes in, you know that you need to basically stop whatever you are doing and fix the production issue. So this kind of issues is basically represented by a white sticky note, where the service level agreement usually will be something less than 24 hours. Based on your team's requirement, based on your customers' expectations, you will be able to define the policies for your different levels of services. So expedite are basically the classes of services where there is an immediate need to do action, and it supersedes in terms of priority all the other items which are there in your pipeline. Fixed delivery date are mostly the items which basically have a due date. For example, there is a compliance related change and your system needs to be ready before a specific date. Most of the issues which falls into this category comes under the fixed delivery date. And anything that doesn't fall into this, you can basically put it in standard class, where there will be an average time of delivery that you are expecting, and there is expectations in terms of the on-time delivery as well as how much time it takes for a feature which is of the type standard to move from the initial state all the way till the end of your pipeline. There is a fourth level where there is no constraint on this type of work items in terms of an end date, but you wanted to kind of make that change anyway. So even if you do it now or you do it 2 weeks down the lane or 1 month down the lane, it doesn't really impact you in terms of the value it brings from a customer's perspective, but that's something that you need to do. So if your software is currently at like 1.6 and you wanted to move into 1.7, as long as that there is a support for the version 1.6, you don't have the need to immediately upgrade to 1.7. So these are the features of the work items which falls into this category. You can put into the classes of service which falls under intangible. Again, this is a starting point. Depending upon what your organization practices, how you follow, you will be able to come up with all your level, your different levels of classes of service. But it is important in Kanban to define these various different classes of service. It should be explicit, and the people who are working in the system should have the same understanding of these classes of service. So that when a person sees an expedite item getting into your backlog, he knows that that needs to be taken up immediately, and it supersedes any other standard class work items which is there in your backlog.